Yeah! And here we go! This is the Race Guru Thunder Hour. I am your host for today, leading it off here, Sean Engel. You can find me on many different social media platforms at Shawnee247. I am one of the lead NASCAR guys here at FantasyGuru.com, and with me today is another great talent from FantasyGuru.com. We got the Kingfish himself, hunting victories after victories on DFS contest. Mark Hogan, the DFS Marlin. Mark, it's great to have you back on the show, bud. We got ourselves another Thunder Hour to go through.
Yeah, Sean, thanks for having me back on and approaching the last, kind of finish, last drift, last heat of the season, I guess, for lack of a better term. So really excited for Talladega. This will be a lighter, I would say, betting week for me. Still going to play some DFS. Super Speedway driving in the playoffs is always chaotic I don't think there's any other way of saying that. And, all bets are on the table at this point. So, go light, but if you do play, feel free to take some shots with some big calls here. So excited for the race upcoming. It was an interesting set of races last weekend. Before we get into it, man, got to give a big shout out to football, NHL, MLB, all the sports here on FantasyGuru.com are in full swing now, and we're just waiting on basketball at this point. But I think we just did we have our first basketball game last night?
I believe NBA. I have not kept up about when exactly it's starting here. Let me see here. Yeah, we got preseason NBA going on now here.
All right, so we got preseason and probably another week or so before we really get going with NBA. But man, Fenty kills it over there. I got to tell you, I remember early mid-November, it only took a few weeks into the season to get like a 12K win over there, reading Fenty's articles. So excited to get after it with all the sports here.
Oh, that's going to be real exciting to see. Fenty really knows his stuff, and when he gets into a groove with this basketball stuff, watch out. By the way, for those that want to get in on Fenty's content or any of the other great sports content over at FantasyGuru.com, you can check out any of the package options over there, including the MVP, Platinum, VIP, or all-in packages. They consist of all the different sports there. Outside of some options include baseball, some options include football, but we still got content available at Fantasy Guru for baseball as the playoffs, they're getting quite deep into their playoff season right there too, Mark. And NFL, we're still in the thick of the regular season. We're about a third of the way through the NFL season at this point. So still plenty of time in order to get into football right here, Mark. I know you've been helping out on that front as well.
Yeah, we've been doing. I've did a couple Core 4 live streams. Got another one coming up here, not this week, but the following, and then Catch of the Week article. Man, I'm hitting about 65-70% over there, and it's like honestly, you just one easy strategy is just take the cover article guy of like mine and Chris's and Jeff's, you just take the cover article players for all these different articles that we're putting out, and you could probably build a pretty strong lineup as well. So, you don't even have to read all of it to get a good idea, but if you do read all of it, you're well equipped to knock down some tournaments.
You know what? I like the idea of that as a strategy right there, Mark. And if nobody else has claimed this idea, I want to get credit for what I'm about to suggest. But you should call that the cover 3 plan.
I love that. Yeah, we should. I should definitely do that because, look, I'm 6 for 6 on my cover player articles. It's just if I have one conviction play every single week and it seems to go through. So, I'll keep it up. I'm sure at some point I'll miss on someone, but generally speaking, we're all hitting at a very high clip. So, the cover 3 lineup, I love that.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense right there. So, yeah, cover 3. Let's coin that right there.
Well, we got racing, man, and there's still money to be had at NASCAR. So I'm excited to talk with you tonight and get into everything that happened last weekend and also look ahead for Talladega on a super speedway.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting to see, especially with the playoff circumstances that are going to come into play this week. But on a final note for FantasyGuru.com, if you want any of the packages that we just mentioned, you can hit up support at FantasyGuru.com in order to get the best possible deal. That is support at FantasyGuru.com. Also, while you're at it, be sure to like, hit subscribe, leave comments, and just interact with us on social media platforms or through Discord, wherever, because we'd love to hear from you. So please go ahead and do just that. Now, you mentioned about the past weekend's slate of races there. How about we actually get into that right now there, Mark? We just dealt with Las Vegas right there. So trucks, they went through their final off weekend of the season. So it was just Xfinity and Cup racing. 2 races from this past weekend right there. The Xfinity Series, it ended up being Eric Almirola winning over there over Connor Zilic, who just still finds a way to still be competitive each and every week, competing for the win. And then in the Cup Series, well, Denny delivered. That's a classic slogan for Denny Hamlin fans right there, especially when FedEx used to be his main sponsor. But, Denny delivered. He ended up getting not just any win, but his 60th career Cup Series victory. So a milestone victory for the number 11 driver right there, Marka. What was your overall takeaways from the weekend in NASCAR racing?
So, Xfinity is getting really, really tough right now just because you have really small contests that you can play with. So, it's like even the main tournament ownership projections that I'm putting out and, that we're doing on even trucks as well. If it's you or Rich doing the cheat sheet over there, it's like we're at this point in the season where the DFS contests are just so small that it's going to be really hard to project ownership in these small contests because you could get 5 or 6 guys that are just all on some random dude. So all of a sudden you got Cole Custer or Noah Gragson at like 60% ownership for literally no reason. So it's just interesting how things kind of play out on those lower levels from a DFS perspective. I think the play right now for trucks and Xfinity is probably just betting at this point. And then I would say for the Xfinity race, what really stood out to me was Corey Day. I think he went up like 20 spots and got like a top 5 this past weekend. I can't remember exactly. I think he finished 5th, I want to say.
Yeah, I got it up here now. He started in the 19th position and made it up to 4th place right there.
Okay,
pretty
so not
impressive
quite
run.
20. Yeah, pretty impressive run, 20 to 4th, and so that I think that's a big move there. He's kind of that's a name we've been talking about to watch. So to see him put up a race like that at the end of the season, it's probably a sign of things to come here going into next year. So I thought Corey Day was really interesting. Was pretty disappointed in Austin Hill going only from 12th to 10th. I thought he would have a little bit of a better race. And the problem is Almirola was in the cheat sheet for Xfinity, but it's like I think I had him at like 40, recommended ownership at like 45%. So just under half the field. And I mean, he crushed it. And it goes into what we've been saying, or at least on my end, I think you guys have said it too in the past, is some of these part-time drivers, there's a reason why we go through that list every week, because some of these guys just specialize on certain tracks, and he had good track history, and I think we have to really place a premium on those types of drivers moving forward, especially a more of a staple type of driver in Almirola who's not doing every single week.
Oh yeah, Almirola is especially a bigger deal because he was a Cup regular for many years too. He's now since dropped down towards driving for Gibbs in this Xfinity ride, and we know those Joe Gibbs racing cars, they're some of the best in the entire field in the Xfinity Series. And then when you put a Cup guy there that's been an established winner in the Cup Series before, that's very noteworthy right there for the circumstances. And you just know that Almirola, even though he's probably not been the driver that's won the most this year. I mean, that goes to Connor Zilic by far, but he's still someone we have to keep an eye on each and every week that he does end up driving in the Xfinity Series. And side note, Almirola did confirm that he is going to be there in that 19 car for the rest of the season too. So that's something in order we have to watch for these last couple of weeks in NASCAR racing right there, Mark.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's really interesting that he's doing that too. Now, this weekend, I mean, all bets are off for anyone, or all bets are on for anyone, I guess, however you want to look at it. But so I don't know, it's like kind of some of the strategy goes out the window at Talladega, and it's all about just trying to get different, basically. But yeah, I mean, I thought Xfinity was interesting. And then, Hamlin won, but from a DFS perspective, it was Kyle Larson, who you really kind of needed. And then Chase Briscoe was a big deal. We talked about him a lot on the podcast last week. So, I thought Christopher Bell he obviously had a good race too. So it's kind of like JGR in general had a good weekend.
Yeah, JGR and Toyota in particular. I mean, Toyota swept 4 of the top 5 right there, with Larson being the only non-Toyota driver in the top 5. And 3 of the top 4 was just Joe Gibbs Racing right there, with Denny winning, Bell in 3rd, and then Briscoe in 4th there. Briscoe almost made that 2-tire call at the end work. If the race only ended a couple of laps sooner, we would have just been talking about him going straight to Phoenix with winning here at Vegas. But no, it's instead we got Denny Hamlin, who just literally drove through his way through the field on the final run right there. He was about, 5th or 6th on that final run, and then he just went up there past Kyle Larson as Larson was trying to work over Briscoe, and then just Hamlin went zooming past Briscoe right there at the end and sailed it off right into the sunset without any further issue.
Yeah, but you know what, Briscoe, I mean, again, we've been saying this too, but the tire management, I think it's bar none. I don't think any, tire management, fuel savings. I mean, I don't think anyone's done it better this season than Briscoe, and it shows now that he's in the top 4. So I think he has to be considered even going into this weekend because of the fact that he's he's good on these types of tracks too. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens this upcoming weekend. But Briscoe, who's in the 4th spot, trying to avoid the cut line, he's absolutely in play.
Oh, definitely. And with as good of a weekend that Briscoe had, it's now vaulted him into the plus side of the playoff cutoff as it stands right now. He's 15 points now ahead of William Byron, who's the first driver out of the playoffs. Now, William Byron, we have to talk about him a little bit, especially in the context of that wreck that he ended up going through in the middle of the race there too. I mean, Byron, for a good amount of the race there was looking like the only driver that could contend with Larson on speed. But man,
I missed it live. I missed it live. I was flipping back and forth, I think, with football at the time, and I came back to the race. And I'm like, what happened with Byron? And then it finally came up and they showed the replay, and I was like, damn, like, I don't know, a huge misunderstanding, but I don't know. Who do you put that on? Is that on him, or it was Ty Dillon, right? Is that on him or Ty Dillon? Because is it on the spotter? And maybe that's, alluding to some of the news after, coming out of that.
Well, as far as it stands, there is just a whole lot of miscommunication that just went on between both drivers and spotters, really, in this case, if you were to ask me about that. Just, first of all, Ty Dillon, okay, Mark, a common thing that drivers end up doing when they're indicating that they're going to be going on to pit road, and this is kind of a little bit old school, is that they usually put their hand out of the window. They indicate to the drivers behind them, hey, I'm about to turn down into pit road right there. In the whole race, and even the replays show this, we did not see Ty Dillon show any kind of arm outside of the window right there, indicating to Byron that he was going to pit road right from that spot. Second of all, we know that there are some drivers there that have mentioned that Las Vegas is one of the trickier pit roads in order to enter, especially at speed coming off like that. So sometimes they do take a bit of a wider arc in order to just basically get the most out of their entry into pit road. And then third of all, the spotter communications between both the number 10 and the number 24 spotters seemed like there wasn't information fully gotten across to both drivers in this sort of circumstance there too. So it ended up being a mess. And then Byron, he just did not get out of the way, and wham, he just crashed right there. It was a very hard lick for that number 24 car.
It's unfortunate, but you know what? He's got a good shot this weekend, and the sports books seem to agree with it. So that was very unfortunate from a playoff standpoint, but a win erases that to a certain degree. So
even so, Willie B's not out of it yet because 15 points is not an insurmountable gap. If Briscoe has a mediocre race or somebody else that's just ahead of Briscoe, like say Christopher Bell, ends up having a pretty not so good race, Byron's back in the point hunt right there too, because 15 points, that could be covered as easily as just Byron finishing second in both of the first two stages of Talladega and those two missing stage points, and bam, it's a tight points battle right and again right there, Mark.
But I got to say, this past weekend, this is the type of racing that was enjoyable. Vegas was enjoyable, I would say. That's the style of racing that I'm curious to watch more. I like watching Vegas. I like Martinsville. I like Darlington. I like Dover. So, we got a super speedway this weekend, and this is always fun, but it's not fun to have too much skin in the game because one wreck can just completely destroy your day.
Oh, definitely. And that's Talladega for you. And I know that's why some drivers, even if you're Kyle Larson sitting 35 points above the cut line, you're still sweating Talladega just because it could erase that deficit in a matter of seconds right there, too. All it takes is one bad move.
But I'm curious to top off Vegas here and just hear, I don't know if you're able to take a look at how we did last week, but curious what our results were and how everything kind of played out from a betting perspective and DFS perspective, really.
So, looking back towards the whole stat line that we posted, I looked back towards this podcast last week and put everything together. Have to say, DFS wise, we ended up doing a really good job last week on this very show because we were able to successfully call good days between me and you for Kyle Larson. Both of us shouted him out in order to finish second right there. I shouted out Christopher Bell and Chase Briscoe as in my top picks. They finished third and fourth. You've ended up shouting out Joey Logano and Alex Bowman, and both of those two drivers ended up having top 10 days in sixth and seventh. Then we both ended up shouting out Ryan Preece and Brad Keselowski, the two RFK drivers, rounding out the top 10 right there, Mark. And then I shouted out Chris Buescher to finish 12th, and then one of your value picks that you mentioned last week, Eric Jones, just snuck into the top 15 there and scored a little bit of place differential while he was at it there too. So overall, pretty solid on the DFS front, and that's not even counting the fact that three of the four drivers that I mentioned in my DFS Core 4 last week on the show ended up all finishing inside the top 10 right there with Larson, Preece, and Keselowski. And then Rich Mileto, even though he didn't really say too many picks, he did say pay a lot of attention to Denny Hamlin, and he was very right about that one right there. So DFS-wise, it was a pretty good week right there, Mark.
Yeah, we were locked in on the top 10. Basically, the only one with all three of us combined we didn't get was whoever placed fifth.
Yeah, which was Tyler Reddick.
There you go.
As far as the bets are concerned, I ended up calling two bets right there successfully from the show last week, with Hamlin being a part of my betting core 4 winners right there at plus 600. I did also successfully call Brad Keselowski to finish in the top 10 at plus 160. And then out of the bets that you called, you did hit on one right there with a head-to-head between Chase Briscoe and Chase Elliott. You took Briscoe at minus 115, and that one ended up hitting there, Mark.
Yeah, I think overall, I pretty much I had a slight profit this weekend. Nothing crazy because I lost Xfinity, but won Cup. I think I'm probably just playing. Well, I'll play a lineup for trucks and Xfinity just to have like a slot machine type of play and just get really different and do something on the main tournament. But I think the investment's probably just going to Cup for this weekend.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense because I feel like the Cup race in some ways could be a little bit easier to predict than how some of the truck and Xfinity drivers are going to do at Talladega because,
Yeah.
yeah, those races there have a higher chance of becoming an even greater mess than the Cup race, I would argue.
Yep. Yep. I don't know if I want that too much a part of that. I'm probably going to play a little college football or something.
Yeah, I mean, college football's in full swing right there, too, so not a bad idea overall there as well.
But there might be some good bets, so keep an eye out for that. Some top 10 type of plays or some winning bets. Connor Zilic is never a bad play, so there's some opportunity out there, and then Cup is I think that'll be a lot of fun with the playoffs. So
it's a good thing you mentioned about the betting aspect of the Xfinity and truck races because sometimes with these races, the books end up getting some really off or crazy odds on some of the drivers, even just to win. And we have seen our fair share of shock victors in those two series before and on these kinds of tracks. So that's definitely worth a look right there.
I mean, even in Cup too, it's you get some crazy names. I think maybe Daytona even a little bit more than Talladega, but in general, super speedways can always provide a contrarian type of result. But I'm curious if there's any news this weekend that could influence the race going into Talladega.
Well, we've got a bunch of news stories to go through this week. Let's start going through and let's knock the big bombshell for silly season out of the way right here. It's now been confirmed. Justin Haley is leaving Spire Motorsports and the number 17 after the 2025 season. I talked a little bit about this with Rich Mileto off air before, but I never really got too much of your thoughts on this, Mark. What do you think about this big news finally being confirmed that Haley is leaving the number 7 car?
So, I do think it is kind of a disservice to Haley. I think he kind of got the short end of the stick to a certain degree. I feel like even have some more insight on the history of how things played out here for him. But he's had tracks and he's had moments where he's gotten a lot of place differential. He's driving with Spire, so it's not like he's driving with Hendrick or JGR or anything like that. But, I mean, he was set up with Rodney Childers initially. So it's like, it's one of those things where it was really promising to begin with and then quickly took a turn. But at the end of the day, I hope we get to see him at least Xfinity for next year. Maybe we see him in another Cup ride. I think it would be kind of fun to see him go down to Xfinity and have kind of another dominant season down there and then, get like a Cup opportunity in 2027.
Yeah, that's the big question mark when it comes to Haley himself is where he's going to go next. At this point, there's not really any real big Cup opportunities that are open until after next season, really. So the big question is just going to be where exactly is he going to go? Now, I know he used to race for Paulig Racing a few years ago, back in both Xfinity and Cup. But it seems like from what I was hearing, especially because Chris Rice, he got on Sirius XM radio right there on the NASCAR channel. He was interviewed today, and he actually touched upon Justin Haley, noting that Haley previously drove for the team and all that. But it seems like for at least next year, he mentioned that it seems like their lineups are set in stone for 2026 on both the Cup, Xfinity, and truck level. So he may not be going back to Kaulig if that's any indication right there, Mark.
Then I don't know what happens. Maybe it goes to trucks, and because the Rams roll out in trucks next season, right?
Yeah, Ram is coming back in 2026.
So maybe he just goes into a Ram and does a new manufacturer, and that's his kind of path to getting back up into the higher levels.
Or we may just see him in a part-time role, and maybe this is kind of like a gap year where he just finds part-time rides until 2027, where maybe more opportunities may open up. I feel like this isn't the last that we may see of Justin Haley, especially considering how much he's flashed all throughout his career. And he is still a Cup Series winner. He won years ago with Spire in his very first stint with the team. So this is not even the first stint that of the team that Haley is on right here with Spire. This has been like his second or so.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, what's really interesting about the news right now is Haley's got good numbers going into Talladega, so it's intriguing to see this type of news around him leading into a track where he's got really strong place differential. I don't think he's ever wrecked either here, so it's like it's a golden opportunity to showcase himself right off the news, and if he can go in with a splash, maybe he walks out with some conversations and quickly finds a ride shortly after.
That is definitely the goal for Haley. Just finish out the year strong and see if he can make a case to find a ride somewhere else. But there's just so far just a big question mark about where he's going. And then the other side of the question mark is with Spire themselves and who they're going to replace Haley with in that number 7 car. Now, a lot of sources and insiders and reporters are pointing towards, and we discussed the idea of this before on this very show, of Daniel Suarez being the one to replace Justin Haley in the number 7 car right there, Mark. What would you think if Daniel Suarez did end up being the driver to fill in for Haley here?
I don't think I would like it. I mean, I think it's a veteran, I guess maybe a safe play, but where's the upside? I don't know. I'd rather see a younger guy get into a ride like that at this point, and I just feel like Suarez is old news. It just feels like he's kind of on his way out already too. So it would seem like almost like a victory lap type of partnership there. But another guy who's got some good numbers here in Talladega. So I'm curious if maybe there's a Suarez Haley head to head bet out there, because that'd be a fun one to take.
Ooh, that would be very intriguing to take as well. I know Suarez is considered like the leading candidate in order to occupy this ride for 2026, but Spire, they have not set a driver in stone for this ride just yet. So there's still other options that can be considered. We could still potentially see a young driver into this car too. We could also see them potentially, because this has been rumored before, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was once rumored in order to be in discussion for this ride as well, too. So who
You think
knows?
that's an upgrade in equipment? I feel like it is.
Compared to Trackhouse Racing, I'd say it may be kind of a lateral move. But if I'm like Ricky Stenhouse and his equipment with Hayek Motorsports, I think this might be a little bit of an upgrade from that ride, particularly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Um, Stenhouse is an interesting one, because if we can see him in a little bit better equipment, that's like a potential Ryan Preece season incoming.
Yeah, but we don't know. As far as Stenhouse himself, because he commented on the rumors months ago, he still said that so far his contract is still with the 47 team going into next year, and he has not heard otherwise. So
Well, a
we're
lot can change.
yeah.
A lot of people can get blindsided. We're starting to see that this week too.
And it's not far-fetched that Spire can go forth and buy out a contract in order to get another driver in there, too. People bring up the buyout route because we know Spire also has some interest in Kyle Busch being a driver that they may want to acquire in the long term, too, Mark.
And you do a buyout, that's a huge commitment. So a buyout means that you're going to take care of that driver.
Definitely. And we do know even if Kyle Busch is not flashed the numbers that he used to flash back in the days when he drove for Joe Gibbs Racing. Kyle still has a lot of talent behind him and a lot of knowledge behind the wheel that any team would want to have.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yo, that X was blowing up yesterday, or I feel like it was today, with that spotter. I saw that just on Twitter with the tweet, him announcing that he showed up. He showed up to race weekend today, and they told him to go home immediately.
Yeah, let's skip ahead to that news then. Ty Dillon's spotter confirms he's been completely fired from Kaulig Racing after the whole Las Vegas incident right there. And you brought the context right up there, Mark. He just went to the track. They told him, go home. You're fired.
That's crazy, man. I mean, at least save the guy a trip, you know? It's interesting. It definitely seems like he was blindsided the way that he kind of tweeted about it and reacted there. I would imagine there's a little bit of fallout. Maybe what happened in the race between Dylan and Byron was kind of like the last straw for that spotter, and maybe they can allude to other instances earlier in the season where I guess I don't know. I guess it wasn't completely on him, but maybe they're putting the blame on him because they need to blame someone.
Yeah, especially because we know that the spotters did play a role in that whole communication mess, as mentioned earlier, between the two drivers right there. And that's ultimately what caused the wreck right there. Even though it's interesting that Chris Rice, when he hopped on SiriusXM earlier, he defended the team, saying that it wasn't the number 10 team's fault that the whole wreck ended up happening right there. But then you say one thing and then you end up going forth and doing this right there. Interesting choice of action right there, huh, Mark?
Yeah, it is. I think there's probably more to that story than anyone will truly know about. I'm curious what those conversations looked like behind the scenes and what actually went down. You know, maybe there's a whole element to this that won't go public. So, but he certainly seemed blindsided. So I thought that was an interesting kind of way to respond.
Yeah, especially posting about it on X like that. And he did put a follow-up post right under that one where he mentioned that it was already determined that he was not going to be spotting for Ty Dillon after the season regardless, but was still going to be with Kaulig Racing in some other form. But now he's just completely gone from Kaulig.
Hmm. Curious to see what happens to him.
But either way, it's noteworthy because Ty Dillon has a new spotter for this week's race, and spotters play a very important and crucial role in a track like Talladega where communication is everything in order to even navigate around the track. So
Yeah, it's a little horrifying. Like, I might think twice about whoever starts behind Ty Dillon.
yeah, because we know that a big part of drivers also doing well at these kinds of tracks is the chemistry and communication between driver and spotter. And if you're in a combination that's still trying to establish the chemistry, that's not going to equal sometimes the strongest results.
Oh, and I've been playing that new NASCAR game, and I'll tell you, the super speedways, you need to be locked in, man. Like any kind of slight deviation from the pack, and you're gonna cause a big wreck. And so I think that plays right into it. Not that the game gives me any kind of true insight, but it's just, again, just to kind of reinforce the fact that on a super speedway, it's very, very finesse, for lack of a better term.
If anything, that's just a glowing endorsement of the game right there as far as touting its being anywhere close to realism like that there, Mark.
Yeah, I'm hoping the subs hear this because, hey, get the game, hit us up. Rich and I are already starting to talk about it. I know at some point, hopefully you get it too, and we can all start doing like a season or something together.
Yeah, we could just start doing online races, get a little lobby going together or two, and we could try to do like a sort of season where we kind of sort it out ourselves, because I do know that the game itself, they don't have like an automated online career or season mode yet. But maybe it could be added in a future NASCAR game or a future update. Who knows? But we can
That'd
track
be
that
fun.
ourselves still, too.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
So, here's someone that ended up not having fun this week. Matt DiBenedetto. Viking Motorsports decided to drop him effective immediately right here. So all throughout the season, DiBenedetto has been driving that 99 car in the Xfinity Series. Now he's no longer driving that car. The team decided to drop him. Even though reasons weren't explicitly given, there is some speculation about why that is. And instead, Connor Mosak is going to be in that car for the final 3 Xfinity Series races for the season there, Mark. What is your first reaction to all this?
Well, is it just for performance? Because it just seems like he really Benedetto hasn't had a good year.
Well, performance didn't seem to really be the big reason, according to insiders and reporters, as it stands, because DiBenedetto helped build up this team and was actually getting some performances. Like, if you'd stuck in just like an average driver into this team was not going to be a mid-pack team. They would have been like the bottom towards the mid-pack or even like a low-tier team. But DiBenedetto at least made this team at times look like a competent mid-pack team. So I don't think performance was really the case here, but rather it might just be another sponsorship deal and money ran out.
Okay. I mean, so Mosak really commands a lot less money than DiBenedetto? I mean, because Mosak's pretty strong, man.
Well, Mosak actually brings some funding. He at least has enough funding in order to get rides out there. DiBenedetto does not have a lot of his own sponsorship, from what I know.
I see. Okay.
And teams, especially some of these lower tier ones where they don't have the backing of the bigger teams, they need all the sponsorship they can get.
Yeah, they got to keep up with those parts. I'm seeing it firsthand in the game. Managing your fleet and keeping your cars together and staying within the budget.
Yeah, big time. See, there you go. Another ringing endorsement right there.
Fun. Yeah, it's fun. You can tell I've probably put in like 8 hours of that game since last week.
Yeah, he's been telling me off air, folks, in case he haven't been indicating that, but he's been telling me all about it, and I hope to really get into the game myself very soon, too.
I'm playing after this.
Yeah, there you go. He's going to finish out his Truck Series season, as is Frankie Muniz, who's returning back to Truck Series racing this week after being previously injured from a non-racing related injury. Now the doctors have cleared him to race, so he's going to be back in the number 33 Rome Brothers racing truck this week there, Mark.
I'm just over it. I mean, I know he's a name, so it's probably going into the funding conversation. I would imagine there's a little bit of that. I just feel like let's see a new face. He's just kind of there.
He's the only real full-time driver that Rome Brothers Racing even has among their 3 trucks, so
it's a heavy investment.
He does have the most backing behind him as it stands, so yeah.
All that Disney money or whatever channel it was, ABC.
Well, he has some other sponsors behind him too, like Morgan & Morgan, for example. I know he's been doing all those Morgan & Morgan commercials. That's
a big one.
See.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
I'm curious this weekend, though. I'm curious. I think we're going to be all over the place. The approach has got to be really contrarian to get different because, look, there's going to be a lot of the field, I think, that are going to be on the same guys, and that is not the way to approach a super speedway. So I'm excited to get into the race going into the 3 races. We're all 3 races on the slate now.
Yeah, you know what? How about we do get into it, Mark? Let's delve a little deeper into this. You mentioned about the aspect that really this could be anybody's kind of race. The field for DFS is going to be on a lot of these certain names. Why don't we get into a little more detail about that and give a little preview of how Talladega is going to work DFS and betting wise, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, So here's the thing. You're not going to see a whole lot of laps led by any one individual. Lots of place differential, lots of movement within the field because we're going to see all kinds of drafting that occurs. So place differential is really going to be the priority. Honestly, it's almost like a downgrade if one of these guys starts up front, but also a very contrarian play if you decide to go that route. I don't mind doing a balanced lineup where you have a few guys that start towards the front and just maintain a position and end up in the front at the end of the race. But I think you have to, pick your spots and make sure you get plenty of place differential into that lineup as well. Quite frankly, it's a stars and scrubs approach to me. The big names, the playoff drivers, they need to stay in the race. So I'm looking for guys that are going to run a clean race, that are going to finish, that can provide some decent place differential as well. And playoff drivers have to be prioritized, in my opinion. So as the trend continues on that front, so overall, place differential, playoff drivers, and go light, quite frankly, because like we said before, one wreck and that can knock out half the field, and very well could take out almost every one of your drivers.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you put it all together right there that place differential is going to be everything, which means qualifying is going to be essential in order to know the results from, especially because usually on these types of tracks, we don't usually get practice. That's like any kind of indication that we get as far as the speed level is concerned. Just the raw speed that some of these teams and drivers even have for this week's race is just through qualifying, and knowing that where these drivers are going to be can really determine the strategy heavily. Let it be known as a disclaimer that any and all drivers that we mentioned as picks today, our impression of them can be subject to change at any point just because of whether they start towards the front or towards the back.
It's really hard at this point to have conviction because qualifying is so dependent here. Where it's like other races, like it's almost like a good process to stick with the guys you like before qualifying because crazy things play out and happen. So I think it's a week by week thing, depends on the track as far as how you approach your build and how much weight you take into what we're saying today. But just add that. That's a little bit of an extra just plug to, give the disclaimer and the waiver that Talladega can quickly change when it comes to our opinions on it after qualifying.
Very much so. Even the drivers that we mentioned for DFS or betting purposes, well, in the case of DFS, that changes our impression of them. But in the case of betting, sometimes the odds can greatly change as well, too. A driver that ends up being plus 1,000 now, they end up qualifying in like the 20s or 30s. You might even see them drop down to even 20 or 25 to 1 at that.
And then vice versa, like, a name at the bottom, it might be worth taking a shot on them at this point in the week. And then they qualify high and, they turn into a plus 2,000 bet versus plus 5,000. So.
Yeah, a lot of this can all change, and that's what's going to be really big and important overall here, too. And if you are playing multiple lineups and you're going the opposite approach of Mark, where you're going to go heavy into this race, at the very least, it cannot be emphasized enough. Diversify.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad approach. Is like if you are gonna spend up and do multi-mass entry and just build a ton of lineups and just have exposure across the board.
Yeah, because this is the kind of track where having exposure to a lot of different drivers can at least keep your investment in play, no matter what.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really either the ideal thing is you either go very heavy and do a lot of lineups, or you go super light and just keep all your chips for the next 2 weeks.
100%.
Yeah, that is really the way to go. Speaking of figuring out ways to go, there's going to be a lot of drivers that are going to be figuring out ways to go, Mark. We got ourselves a really large list here between both the Trucks Xfinity and Cup Series race for the list of the notables and part-timers right here. So how about we start going through all these lists right here, Mark? It's quite large. Quite large.
Yeah, let's do it. You want me to take trucks?
Yeah, take trucks right here.
All right, so we got Brett Holmes in the number 1 with Tricon Garage. That's an interesting play. And oh yeah, by the way, again, this is the list. This is the list we were just talking about earlier in the show. Same thing with Xfinity, where these part-time guys, take note. If there's a name that you like here, put a premium on it. So Brett Holmes, the number 1 in the Tricon Garage. Nathan Bird in the 02 with Young's Motorsports. That's an interesting one. All these low end guys are fascinating. Josh Rome, speaking of the Rome brothers, in the number 2 with RBR. Norm Benning, number 6 with Norm Benning Racing. JJ Yelly in the number 7 for Spire Motorsports. That's an interesting one. Chris Wright in the number 16 with I can't get this one right for the life of me. McAnally Hilgerman Racing. I don't think I'm saying that one right.
McAnally Hilgerman Racing.
Okay. Yeah, I can't ever figure that one out. Jason White in the number 22 with Rome Brothers Racing as well. We mentioned earlier, Frankie Muniz, the number 33 with Rome Brothers Racing. So a lot of RBR guys here. Greg Van Alst in the number 35 with Greg Van Alst Motorsports. That's an interesting one. Luke Fenhouse is a really interesting one with number 66 of Thor Sport Racing. Love me some Luke Fenhouse this weekend. Tyler Tomasi, number 69 with Motorsports Business Management. Caleb Costner in the number 74 with Mike Harmon Racing, and Parker Kligerman in the number 75 for Henderson Motorsports.
That right there, that last name you just rattled off there, that out of that entire list, that's the one I've got my eye on the most right there of these part-time guys.
That's the quintessential Almirola, in my opinion, here for this week.
Especially considering that Kligerman technically won one of these races earlier this year in that very truck. So
there you go.
That right there, you should pay a lot of attention to that. For the Xfinity Series, we got ourselves a list consisting of Cesar Baccarella in the number 5 for Alpha Prime Racing. Nick Lights is back in the 07 for SS Greenlight Racing. Another name to really watch right here is Brendan Butterbean Queen in the number 11 for Colleague Racing. Garrett Smithley's in the number 14 for SS Greenlight Racing. As mentioned before, Eric Almirola, he's back in the 19 again for Joe Gibbs Racing. Then we have Jordan Anderson himself in the number 32 for his own team, Jordan Anderson Racing. That's another name to watch that's also finished pretty well at these kinds of tracks before. David Starr's in the number 35 for Joey Gase Motorsports. Josh Williams is in the number 45 for Alpha Prime Racing. Joey Gase himself is in the number 53 car for his own team, Joey Gase Motorsports. Leland Honeyman is in the number 70 for Cope Family Racing. Carson Ware is in the number 74 for Mike Harmon Racing. Mason Maggio is in the number 91 for DGM Racing. And then it's all rounded out by Connor Mosak in the number 99 for Viking Motorsports, filling in for Matt DiBenedetto right there.
Yeah, Almirola, like you said, I think that's the one that truly sticks out with this group. And then Josh Williams, that's an interesting one with Alpha Prime. I'm curious if that trajectory goes up or down with Josh Williams here in Alpha Prime Racing.
I think it's going to be interesting because with some of these mid-pack teams that Josh Williams has been on before, like the DGMs and the Alpha Primes, he has sometimes elevated their equipment a little bit to better results. It's not like the stint he had with Colleague Racing where he really didn't showcase that as much now. So maybe being on a lower team, less pressure makes him perform better as a result there, Mark.
We'll see. But we got some Cup guys too. I could rattle them off real quick if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead.
We got Austin Hill in the number 33 with Richard Childress Racing. So Austin Hill is always a fascinating name when it comes to these types of tracks. Anthony Alfredo in the number 62 of Beer Motorsports. Another interesting name. Both. Is he doing Xfinity this weekend too? He's got to be doing. Yeah. So
Alfredo's doing double duty.
So he's getting some extra track time. So that's an interesting one. Casey Mears in the number 66 with Garage 66, and then BJ McLeod in the number 78 with Live Fast Motorsports.
Really, I think all these names might have some viability for this week's race if you really wanted to get down to it. we know Austin Hill, how good he's been in the Xfinity cars on this kind of racing here. So seeing him in the Cup car there, that's encouraging too, especially if he qualifies in the back. Anthony Alfredo is probably my favorite name of the list in order to watch, just because equipment-wise, that's similar to an RCR car, and Alfredo's displayed some favorable results on this kind of track before. But BJ McLeod in particular, I think, is another name we should not underestimate either, just because if you're looking for a driver just to finish and just to maybe get a few spots of place differential, BJ is usually a safe bet in order to do that, because his car, that number 78, never usually is the fastest of qualifiers on this kind of track, but ends up always being able to, most of the time, at least finish the races. Or if it doesn't finish, it at least gets far enough that it gets past some other guys and end up crashing or having issues, which that in itself could pay out the salary right there, Mark.
Yeah, that's a name I feel like that I want to say he always stood out for Atlanta too earlier this season. So maybe I'm wrong on that. It was either Atlanta or maybe Daytona, but definitely seems like this track type is down his alley. I don't know much about Casey Mears. All three of those guys stuck out to me as well, with the exception of Mears. Just because it's a little bit of an unknown for me.
Well, Casey Mears, he used to be a Cup regular many years ago for several different teams, including at one point he drove for Hendrick, at one point he drove for Ganassi, and then later on he spent most of his tenure with Germain Racing, which had a technical alliance with RCR at the time too. So he flashed some decent results here and there too as well. So
I think the difference. Oh, I'm sorry.
So I do think that he is a name to watch, but not as much as the other three, because he's still quite far removed from those days when he used to be a full-time competitor too. So I'm not putting as much stake into it too, especially because I think the 66 car might be the slowest car in the field. But
yeah,
even being the slowest car in the field, you could still end up having a positive day in DFS just because of the type of track this is.
Yeah, and it's I kind of look at it and I'm like, Mears is the one guy who doesn't have really track time, right? So that's also part of the reason, and I think that's the difference too in going after that Amarola type that we mentioned earlier is, someone who's they're part-time or they're not doing every race, but they're doing a lot of them, and I think there's a lot of weight to that. And in this situation with some of these Cup guys, two of the four are racing the previous day, and one of them we've seen in probably 5 or 6 races this season. Mears is the one that is concerning to me, because this has got to be his only race this year, right? I don't think we've seen him in any other races this season.
He has popped up a few other races this season as well.
Really?
You don't hear about him because he's in that 66 car, which is about as slow as throwing a brick across the way.
I gotcha. Yeah, so the speed might be an issue.
Yeah, that's the only thing about it. If you're picking that 66 car this week, the thing you're hoping that it does is just log laps and hopefully finish while it takes over other drivers that don't finish.
Pray for a bunch of wrecks and somehow not get impacted by it in the back of the field.
All the other drivers in the field at least have some sort of ability where they can maneuver through the pack and at least be remotely competitive.
Maybe he gets a few fastest laps or just tailing in the back.
It's possible, Mark. It's possible.
Slowest car on the track records the fastest lap of the race.
Not something you see very often, but I'm sure it's happened before.
Well, I'm curious who you're landed on here, because I think we're gonna have a lot of chalk when it comes to the playoffs, and my approach, of course, is I'm willing to eat the chalk at the top and just try to get different at the bottom, and I think that's going to absolutely apply here for this weekend.
Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of experimentation for that. I mean, you think about the skill level of these drivers has probably been closer than ever before. So there's just so many different routes that you can go as far as DFS construction is concerned. But before we get into that, just as a reminder, we are part of fantasyguru.com. So if you like the content you see here or hear here, You can also go over to fantasyguru.com, get any of the packages, including MVP, Platinum, VIP, or All In, which include the NASCAR content. And you can pay one price, get covered for the whole year. If you do want MLB content, that's still available over at fantasyguru.com as well. And the NFL packages and the guide is still available. Hit up support at fantasyguru.com in order to get the best possible deal that you can get. You be nice to them, they'll be nice to you and hook you right on up. And don't forget to like, subscribe, leave comments, and just interact with us and let us know how we're doing. So that's always fun in order to hear from everybody on that. Now, you said picks. Let's get into picks here. You wanted to know who I landed on at the top right here? Well, I'll tell you. I've got Ryan Blaney, William Byron, and Chase Elliott. These have been three of the best drivers over on this style of racing with the drafting tracks this season. Blaney's won Talladega more than once before. William Byron, he's won at Daytona earlier in the year. And then Chase Elliott, well, Chase Elliott, he's been one of the more consistent drivers when it comes to drafting tracks overall in his Cup career. You look towards even the overall average finish for Chase Elliott in comparison to other drivers right there. Out of all full-time drivers that have been in the sport since then, he has the best average finish of 13.5 in 22 races. And if you think that's not too great, it's just because, well, the average finish goes down on these types of tracks more than any other track type. But 22 races, 18 times he's finished in the top 20, 11 times. That's half of those times he's finished inside the top 10 since the next-gen car in 2022 emerged. So if you're looking for a driver right there, and especially you got to consider the playoff circumstances of Byron and Elliott in particular, they might be a little bit more likely to gun for the win right here rather than going forth and trying to just survive or have a good day. You could put Ryan Blaney in that circumstance too, especially considering he's quite far back in the points. But if you're looking based on playoff circumstances, Elliott and Blaney in particular, they know that they're far back enough that they're going to try to probably gun for the win, knowing that this is a good opportunity for both of those drivers, Mark.
Yeah, 100%. I think, all those guys, for those reasons that you just mentioned, are totally in play. Quite frankly, all of Team Penske, I think, is in play here. Elliott's going to be, I think, chalky. So is Byron. Byron is tied, amongst four people. Keep that in mind for, most favorable odds to win the race. I think Elliott's included in that group as well at plus 1,000. But I think Elliott, with the success he's seen, is probably going to be chalky, and that is making me kind of play off of him because, quite honestly, my strategy is going to be primarily driven by ownership and place differential here for this weekend. So it's like if Chase Elliott qualifies 19th, he's going to be probably 50% ownership. And at that point, I'd rather just try to get leverage and see if he wrecks or something like that and takes out 50% of the field in one caution. So that's kind of my thought process as far as approaching these. And like Sean was saying earlier, don't take too much weight in some of these other names that we're saying. But I threw out Elliott and Byron because of the sheer fact that neither of them have DNF'd here. So and Byron, I think, is looking for his first Talladega win. I think what's also interesting about him is just the sheer fact that he's going to be probably pretty high owned, but all of the wins are spread out at super speedways. It's very hard for guys to repeat and go out and do it. So honestly, my mindset has been targeting guys who generally don't have wins here. Looking for that new winner, but also guys who do well in drafting tracks and drivers with history of not wrecking. So that's going to be how a lot of my picks are influenced tonight. To round out my top three, I did include Christopher Bell. So I think he's got 1 or 2 DNFs here. So that's probably the exception to that rule. I think at this price point at $9,000 for Christopher Bell, that is just a great savings, a wonderful discount for a top, playoff driver. So Christopher Bell, I think, is very intriguing here. He needs a big race. We've seen him. He can do drafting tracks at super speedways, but I think the appeal here is that you get a savings, and because the numbers don't jump off the page with him, I think he's going to get overlooked a lot. And at $9K to get overlooked for Christopher Bell, a playoff driver, I'm all over that for that reason.
So the real crazy thing is that all four of the drivers that we have mentioned in the context of our top picks have all won on this style of racing, at least at some point this year. Byron won the Daytona 500. Blaney won the second race at Daytona. Elliott won the second Atlanta race, and then Bell won the first Atlanta race earlier this year. So just goes to show right there. We're relying on the drivers that have proven that they can get it done on this style of racing before. And I do like the Christopher Bell call out too, because here's the thing too that I also like about it that you didn't touch upon was the fact that the Toyotas themselves, they get a little bit iffy on qualifying on these kinds of tracks too. And sometimes, even though there's cases where we've seen the Toyotas may have speed sometimes in qualifying, I mean, you can look at Chase Briscoe when he qualified and on the pole in Daytona 500 earlier this year. There has been other cases where the Toyotas just don't seem to have that fire-off speed right there and qualify in mid-pack, and we've seen that before be a really big advantage DFS-wise towards wanting to utilize some of those drivers, and that could play right into the hands of the number 20 driver right there.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. I like that, that makes me very interested in Toyotas now. But it almost makes me interested in Toyota bets for like maybe some cheaper guys too. So that's an interesting call.
Very much so. And I will say that I technically do have a Toyota related call much later on that I will say in the betting section right here.
Okay.
That's a tease. So
all right.
Go. Let's get into the mid-tier drivers to watch. This is where we start to diversify a little more and think about some other names right here. I've got my eye on Chase Briscoe right here for this tier. Playoff driver, you get him at a severe hefty discount this week as well. And I also have my eye on Alex Bowman. The Hendrick drivers tend to do pretty well on this style of racing, and especially Bowman, who I think is kind of an underrated drafting track racer. And then I also got Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Stenhouse, he won this race exactly 1 year ago right here when he was not even a playoff driver, and he's been relatively solid on the drafting tracks this season, placing top 20 in the majority of races, and even sprinkled a few top 10s in there too. Do not underestimate Ricky Stenhouse on these kinds of tracks. And the other thing I did want to bring up with Stenhouse is the price discrepancy between the both sites as it is this week. On DraftKings, he's like about mid 8K right there. But on FanDuel, he's like towards a high 7K. And the price discrepancy right here is just about the fact that Stenhouse, value-wise, is considered much cheaper on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. So you can use him in two different circumstances just based on the salary alone. Whereas if you were playing with him on DraftKings, he can be a really appealing tournament play. Whereas on FanDuel, he could be rounded up pretty well there to be a nice cash game play there.
I kind of like the FanDuel approach a little bit more because I think because of how good his numbers are at Talladega, even though he's priced up, I think you're playing in smaller contests at this point of the season for Talladega. So you have a lot smarter DFS players out there and smaller groups of competitors. So I feel like even though he's priced up, I think a lot of the DFS players and community will kind of recognize, oh, well, there's a reason why he's priced up. And I think there's still going to be some decent amount of ownership on him. And he's wrecky, man. So I get a little concerned about that too. But I like the FanDuel approach with Ricky Stenhouse. And if I have a FanDuel lineup for this weekend, he'll probably be in it.
Yeah, if you're looking at Stenhouse's numbers, he's only technically not finished only one race on the drafting tracks this year. And that was just the second Daytona race where he got involved in a multi-car accident where really he wasn't the one that caused it right there. So,
And, I think he's only at Talladega over 7 races since the next gen car. He's also only wrecked once, and he's got a win. So he's an appealing play for sure.
definitely. Like him a lot this week right there. Who do you have this week there, Mark? I think you have some interesting names too.
So you and I overlap with Bowman and Briscoe. I'll add just kind of to what I was saying before, but again, the theme I think with both of those, Bowman has not DNF'd here in the next gen car, so he's an appealing one. He's also got some pretty solid place differential. He's averaging finishing 13th and starting in the 21st position over 6 races. He's finished as high as 5th, and he has 0 DNFs. So I think Alex Bowman is particularly intriguing. Chase Briscoe, I just think on a drafting track, a guy who's, we talked about how well he's doing with tire management, how well he's doing with fuel savings. Some of those elements could potentially maybe even come into play here. But I like Chase Briscoe a lot in this one, especially at that price point that you mentioned at 7,900. And then lastly, this is a contrarian one, in my opinion. I'm curious to see what the ownership ends up landing on him here with. But Kyle Busch, this is a driver who's, had a win here. This is a driver who also has not DNF'd a single time in the next gen car. So surprisingly, Kyle Busch is taking care of his car on a track this season, or I guess on this track in the next gen car. And it just feels like this season that has not been the case. So maybe we get an outlier here with him and another big win.
It's interesting that you brought up Kyle Busch because RCR as an organization, this is like the one track type other than Austin Dillon specifically at Richmond, where they really bring the speed on this kind of racing so far. So I do like the Kyle Busch call out. I did actually consider him for my list as well. And I think you mentioned about Briscoe right here. He's 7,500 on FanDuel, which is even cheaper than Stenhouse is, might I add, and not by much. So interesting to
Crazy.
call out right there too. And even though Briscoe, he only has one single top 10 on drafting tracks this year, the other interesting stat that to point out is that in 4 of the 5 races on drafting tracks this year, he's at least led multiple laps. So he's been able to find his way to the front some way, somehow.
Yeah, this mid tier is interesting because I don't know how much I'm going to touch it, but I think I'm probably, if I am, I'm probably paying up in the mid tier just because I'm going to pay so far down at the bottom. But there's a lot of value options. And quite frankly, it just can go so many different ways. It's like Stars and Scrubs is on the table. Playing every driver in the mid tier between 7 and 8K is also on the table. And that might be a lot less ownership than the other approach, just because of how people have that recency bias with dominators in the last week or so. So I think that's an interesting maybe take on it too. Is if you really want to get different, build a lineup with just a bunch of mid tier guys.
Oh, yeah, especially because even through our own list, even outside of them, there's a couple of other interesting names that were worthy of consideration as well. You could think towards Bubba Wallace. He's at 7,700 in particular. Chris Buescher, who we nicknamed Mr. Top 10 on the show, 8K on DraftKings. Daniel Suarez, who's shown some solid history on the drafting track, 7,500. And then I'll get my obligatory Ryan Preece mention out of the way here too, 7,400 as well. I mean, he's been top 20 in 3 of the different races. And also remember too, he finished as the runner-up at Talladega earlier in the season before his car got tagged for disqualification right there. So do not underestimate the RFK drivers in the number 17 or the number 60 this week.
Yeah, I like RFK too. Like Brad Keselowski is on the table. It's just, I know it's like non-committal here, but it's just kind of hard to lock in until we know qualifying position.
Yeah, and that's especially going to matter for the last tier of drivers we're talking about today, the sleepers and value tier. So this is where if you wanted to get really creative and interesting, this is the place to do it right here. Because you know what? Even when we look towards the list that we have here, where we have some overlap in the top and mid tier ranges, there's none of that here.
No, yeah, and I think that's almost by design from on our side of things, right? It's just the thought process is, we want to try and get different down at the bottom, and then there's also a lot of different options. Um, I can get into mine if you want, but I got Justin Haley at 6,500. That's my pay up here in the value tier. So with all the news, I think he's going to be kind of driving for a ride potentially. He's got really, really good numbers here. So, if I pull it up, he's averaging a plus 10 place differential at Talladega over 7 races in the next gen car. He's, again, we talk about DNFs, has not DNF'd in the next gen car. He's raced 19 times at Talladega career wise and only wrecked once. He's got positive place differential in the majority of races that he's participated here within the next gen car. I think he's only had negative place differential in 2 races, with one of them going from starting at 11th and going to 12th. So, this is someone who's also got 2 top 10s within the last 2 years. I think Haley, this is the race that he probably had circled to make sure he did well on to begin with. And now that with the news this week, I think he's all in here, and he has to put extra emphasis on this. So Justin Haley, I'm in on. Anthony Alfredo and Cody Ware. So we talked about how Anthony Alfredo gets to double up and do Cup in addition to Xfinity, but he's got some really good numbers when it comes to place differential as well, averaging an increase of 10 positions too. Another driver who, yes, we talked about Haley with not wrecking. Alfredo's only ran 3 times here, so he hasn't wrecked, but it's a smaller sample size. To throw that stat out the window, I do think Alfredo is a little bit riskier, just because of the sheer fact that we have less data on that, and he's got the track time, and he's probably just going to be a little bit more aggressive in Cup because of that. But then lastly, Cody Ware at $5,300. So we're normally not throwing out Cody Ware on this podcast, but he's interesting here. He's averaging plus 9 place differential. He's placed as high as 12th within the next gen car. He's ran 5 races here. He hasn't wrecked. I think there's a lot going for him. I think he only has career wise maybe 1 wreck over the course of 10 starts. And this is someone who, because he's always typically starting from the back, he's recorded positive place differential every single race that he's ran here in his career. So Cody Ware with Rick Ware Racing, I think, is an interesting play as well.
I can dig all the picks. Big fan of the Anthony Alfredo one as well. I heavily considered him for my list based on his drafting track history alone. It's been pretty good, even though he's had some blips where he's gotten involved in wrecks or had underwhelming results. Majority of his career, he's been really good on the style of racing. I do like the Cody Ware call out too. You're not going to hear me mention that often on this pod, but this is one of the few tracks where starting Cody Ware is actually a viable option. And Haley, do like him on this track as well. I can get behind all 3 of these picks.
I love the narrative with Haley. I think that's the appealing thing, and I think that narrative is going to go overlooked, and he's still going to be low owned. So I think that's probably the biggest reason, in light of some of this news here as well, as to why I might stick with him on race day.
If there's any kind of track where he can get it done, it's definitely a Talladega-like track. He's actually won multiple times in the Xfinity Series on this particular track type as well. And his only Cup win comes from Daytona, which also goes to show if they're going to bank on Haley to have a good result anywhere, this is the type of track he's going to get it on. So,
And that would be a really fun winning bet to place for Cup, is a Justin Haley win.
oh yeah, Justin Haley, he's what I'm looking here. Currently 40-1 in order to win.
I'm going to throw it into my bets here.
That's a good McChicken bet right there.
Oh, yeah.
Getting into my picks here for the sleepers and bargains. First of all, I got Michael McDowell. This is a driver here where if you want a driver that's has a history of performing pretty well on these types of tracks, McDowell's the guy right there. In fact, actually, there's really only been 2 drivers that have been able to finish top 20 in every single drafting race this season. Michael McDowell and the other name, Chase Elliott. That right there is a very big comparable to make when you're comparing yourself with one of the top drivers out there as far as history on this overall track is concerned this season right there. And McDowell, he's way cheaper than Chase Elliott in order to add into rosters right there. So give me some of that 71 car right there. Next, I have Eric Jones, who historically has performed very well on this style of racing as well. 7 races in the next-gen car at Talladega, 5 top 20 finishes, with 4 of them being top 10s. And in 4 of the 5 drafting races we've ran so far this season, he's been 21st or better, including 2 finishes of 5th in the last 2 drafting races right there, too. So that 43 car, do not underestimate it this week. This is a really good track for Eric Jones. Like it right there. And then the last driver I have is, I mentioned him a few times in the context of road courses, but Cole Custer. I think this is actually a track where you can utilize the 41 driver this week. After all, he has displayed some pretty decent results for the price. And if you're looking for a sub 6K guy, if you don't feel like using Cody Ware, you don't feel like using Anthony Alfredo, Custer's another driver that I actually would put a lot of trust into it just based on past history alone. And even on the drafting track races this season, he's actually been better than most of the other drivers as far as finishing position is concerned this season, too. So that's also why I have him up there as well.
I like all those picks. And I think the one that stuck out to me, who I also almost put on my list, was Eric Jones. And everything that you said, 100% the reasons why I like him. And then I would just add to like plus 10 place differential on average. And he is, out of all the drivers in the field, when it comes to that gap in place differential goes, he's got the highest finishing position with the highest amount of place differential. So you're really kind of maximizing value potential with him here. There's a lot of positive expected value with Eric Jones. That's a sharp play. So he's going to be really worthy of consideration. I would my thought process when you're starting to read off your drivers, I just read off mine, was I'm just going to take this whole group. I'm going to put them in a player pool between everyone that you just said and I just said across the board. And then I'm going to start crossing names off the list once qualifying happens and see who I like based off of place differential and formulate my lineup from there. So we've got a player pool of a lot of names and guys that we like. Don't only lock in on that player pool, because there could be names on here that we didn't even mention that we like Brad Keselowski is one. It's like he could do well here, like totally well, but we don't have him necessarily listed as a play. So just keep an open mind with your player pool. But generally speaking, this is the pool I'm starting with.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? Even to get more specific about Custer there, too, he shares the same amount of types of finishes with Eric Jones by being 21st or better in 4 of the 5 drafting races this season so far, which is really nuts when you consider that, too, because we've been talking about Eric Jones way more on the show than we've talked about Cole Custer. But that right there, that actually is kind of impressive to note. But even you mentioned about other drivers there. We didn't talk about Ty Gibbs, who's had some pretty decent numbers. Carson Hocevar. Even AJ Allmendinger is another one right there. Austin Hill, as we mentioned earlier, too, could be another name to watch. There's just so
Yeah.
many names.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of all over the place, but it's those are a good starting point, and those are some of the value guys that give us truly the most value and the most opportunity to score big points here.
Agreed. I think these 6 are a pretty good base in order to start from. Well, let's see if they end up in our core force now, shall we, Mark?
Yeah, I'm just gonna go Team Hendrick. I got Chase Elliott at 9,800, William Byron at 10K, Alex Bowman at 7,300. These guys finish races here, and then Cody Ware to round it out at 5,300, so I can pay up for the 2 Hendrick Motorsports guys. Basically, I'm rolling out a full Team Hendrick stack with the exception of Kyle Larson because he terrifies me on super speedways.
Yet the crazy thing is that Kyle Larson on super speedways this year has actually been not that bad.
But I don't know. I feel like the correction is coming, and it might be this weekend.
Yet, even when you consider his spot in the playoff standings right there, he's plus 35 to the good. I could see Larson taking an approach where he's going to ride this one very safely.
Play it safe. Too. Yeah, he's almost like a place like absolutely a place differential dependent play. If we see him start in like the 30s, we can expect him to get into like the top 15 there. But even that at his price point doesn't really pay off. So it's got to be really kind of a savvy spot for him. Maybe he starts like 24th. I think that's worth consideration. He breaks into the top 10, possibly cracks a top 5. It's kind of scary though.
So let me ask you this then. Would you rather start him on DraftKings or FanDuel this week?
I haven't looked at his pricing on FanDuel, but if he's much lower priced over
10K,
there.
a flat 10K.
Oh yeah, all over it then. That might be the approach is just since I've got 3 drivers in my DraftKings lineup from Hendrick Motorsports, I might as well round it out and put him in the 4th over on FanDuel.
Come to think of it, the gap between Larson and Alex Bowman between the two sites is very different because Bowman, he's 7,300 on DraftKings while Larson's 9,500, whereas on FanDuel, they're only separated by $500 and next to each other on the price ladder.
That's crazy. And then because you said you got Stenhouse and we got Briscoe, so it's like my lineup over there is like a Larson, Briscoe, Stenhouse type of build.
Yeah, you even look on FanDuel right here. Some of the there's been a lot of interesting names that are on hefty discount over there. I mentioned about Stenhouse and Briscoe there, 7,800 and 7,500. They're both cheaper than Ryan Preece and Bubba Wallace, for example. Christopher Bell is only 9K, which makes him cheaper than Alex Bowman, by the way, on there.
That's ridiculous.
How about this one right here? Tyler Reddick. He's only 7,200 on FanDuel.
I might just play on FanDuel this week. These price points, I'm sure all of these guys are going to be chalk, though. Although, who knows? With the Super Speedway, maybe you don't see that much chalk.
Yeah, maybe. It's possible.
Or Ross you get Chastain really different on FanDuel. Yeah, and Chastain is a good option here as well. The thing is, it's almost like, okay, so all these guys that are priced down, you're probably going to see a lot of ownership. So then the play is like, okay, maybe you don't go with any of those guys on FanDuel and you roll out a completely contrarian lineup where you're paying up in spots that no one else is willing to do. Just honestly, the number one priority for me is how can I get different this week? It almost prioritizes good plays, value plays, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Either way, I think the strategy is going to be the same. I just think the drivers are going to do it with is going to differ from site to site this week.
So, and then we talk about diversifying. So I don't think we heard your DFS picks here. What's your core for?
All right, let's go here. So I've got Ryan Blaney at 10,500 right here, 13,500 on FanDuel, second most expensive driver on FanDuel, most expensive on DraftKings. Then I got Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He's 8,500 on DraftKings, 7,800 as mentioned on FanDuel. Then I got Michael McDowell into the core four right here at 6,700 on DraftKings. He's only 5,800 on FanDuel. And then rounding it out, I got Eric Jones, who's 6,300 on DraftKings, and he's only 4,200 on FanDuel right there. So it is a hefty discount right there.
Yeah, Eric Jones is quite the play. He's probably going to make it into my lineup by the time we get to race day here.
I think there's a pretty good chance I might be doing the same thing too. Let's get into the betting core fours as it stands right here. So these are the drivers that we've got winning as it is. I've got William Byron at plus 1,000, as is Ryan Blaney at plus 1,000. And then you were wondering if Chase Elliott was going to be there at that plus 1,000 tie. He's not. He's plus 1,100 right there in order to win. That I got him on my betting core for. Then I'm rounding it out with Brad Keselowski, who still is, to this day, the all-time winningest driver of the active drivers at Talladega with 6 career Cup victories at the site. And he's plus 1,800 in order to win this week. And I like the RFK guys. And if you want to bet on an RFK guy in order to probably get up there and compete for the win, I like Brad the most to do it.
And it's so funny. I love Brad, but my core four betting winners kind of take almost like the same approach. And I promise we didn't plan this, but I overlapped here with Byron as a great bet, especially because he's seeking a win here. Joey Logano, so the other Team Penske driver at plus 1,000, same exact odds as Ryan Blaney. I think he's got just as good of a shot, and we really haven't talked about him too much. Probably the place that we truly differ here is Christopher Bell. I jotted him down at plus 1,800. I think that's just insane. A really nice discount for Christopher Bell. And I thought the point that you brought up earlier, where, we've seen him win a super speedway, Atlanta in that first race is interesting. Chris Buescher, to round it out at plus 2,200. I'm into RFK too. I think those guys are totally in play. We talked about how we reference him as Mr. Top 10. I could easily see a Chris Buescher top 10 again here. And who knows, maybe he pulls out his first one.
Yeah, I think it's possible for Buescher in order to squeeze out a victory as well. Like the call there. And we almost went through the whole show without getting through the Joey Logano discussion that we always have on these types of tracks. But to summarize it and put a bow on that, we know Logano runs very well on these kinds of tracks. He's going to get to the front at some point. But is he going to finish there? That's in doubt.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think, that's probably my least favorite bet of the four that I have in my core four betting winners. But he could be also a really interesting DFS play because that's the type of guy who will try to qualify or end up qualifying towards the front and making him an automatic contrarian play.
Yeah, but I'm not trusting Logano with an inch of my life on these kinds of tracks until he learns to consistently finish on these types of tracks.
Fair.
I mean, come on now. The amount of times that he's ended up DNFing or finishing outside the top 10, despite all the laps he's led on this very track, I cannot trust it for my life. And you know what? That's been paying off for me still. I'm taking that approach until I see at least like a streak of multiple races where Logano finishes as well as he runs.
Yeah, I mean, to Sean's point, he was 39th earlier this year. He had an accident last year in October. He went from 7th to 19th. In April of 2024, 2nd to 24th, 8th to 30th. But we've seen him win here in the past two. We've seen 3 wins. So this is strictly a tournament play if you're going to go after him because we'll probably see him in single-digit ownership.
I don't know. I don't know about single-digit now, but I can see low ownership too. I don't know about single-digit.
I think everyone's going to be scared. I mean, think about it. He's career-wise, he's got 10 DNFs here, right? So that's an insane number. And I think that's going to scare away a lot of people because a lot of people have the same kind of understanding of him. But you are right from a playoff standpoint, that'll increase his ownership by at least 10%. So yeah, probably like 15% then.
Yeah, I think that's more about what I'd expect right there. I think the playoff aspect and there's always going to be DFS players who won't dig into the numbers and who won't study up like we do, and they're
Sure,
just going
Team
to know
Penske.
that Logano is just fast here, and they're like, oh, I'll just stick Logano in here. He's going to lead laps, get me points, and finish.
Yeah.
No, that's not the case.
Yeah, the finish part is probably the most questionable.
It's not the fact that he could get to the front. We know he's likely going to get to the front. It's just the question if he could stay there.
But if he finishes, he's got a shot at winning.
Yeah, and Logano said it himself too, that the mentality he's taking these next 2 weeks is he's just going to try to win. Flat out try to win.
There you go.
So, boom or bust if you're going with Mr. 22 right there.
And if he doesn't, he probably doesn't care that he wrecks the rest of the field. So
he's just going to be like, all right, do I have to win Martinsville? No. I didn't win at Talladega. I'm winning Martinsville. I'm going to go for it.
Yep. Pretty
much.
You got any other ancillary bets here? Anyone that stuck out to you as some nice value?
Yeah, so I'm actually not going to go too crazy with some of the other categories, but I am going to throw out a few names for top 10s here that I think could be worth consideration. I do think that this is a good race if you want to bet some of these top 10s, that you can try to round robin these and then maybe actually get some profit that way. This is a good track in order to do that kind of thing, because you get a bunch of these drivers that have like plus odds on them. There's a good chance that they could legitimately get there, and then that's going to be a big payday as a result betting wise. So I've got Daniel Suarez for a top 10. He's at minus 115, but I think he can actually get there. Maybe a name to watch in case he goes to plus odds later on after qualifying. But that's the only minus odds guy I'm going to mention here at the moment. Then I have Alex Bowman. He's at plus 100. Michael McDowell at plus 130. Justin Haley at plus 150. And Eric Jones at plus 160 right there, all for top 10s. Then I'm going to throw a McChicken here. So my McChicken, well, I just mentioned him. Eric Jones to win at plus 4,500 right here. And this McChicken comes with a little bit of a bonus. We're going to squeeze a little sauce onto this McChicken right here. And that is that I also think that you can bet Eric Jones as the top Toyota at plus 1,000. And you know what? He accomplished this in this very race 1 year ago, too. So it's not like it's impossible for it to happen. He's done it once before.
Man, think about a McChicken with like some Chick-fil-A sauce with it. Just combine the two. I feel like that's what that bet is right there. Just sweet returns in general. So I personally I think all those bets are good. I'm just a little scared that I'm going to get wrecked with placing a bunch of top 10 bets because of a wreck. So I'm not getting too crazy with it, but I got a McChicken, and that's the narrative. That's the driver who has plus 10 place differential here. That's the guy on the hot seat who needs a ride. Justin Haley at plus 4,000. Go ahead and give me a McChicken and add a McFlurry on top of it here.
Yeah, there you go. For a moment, I thought we were going to call him Justin McChicken on the rundown sheet here.
Maybe I'll combine that with McColney Racing or whatever that team's name is. I still can't get it right.
McAnally.
McAnally McChicken.
Yeah, that's pretty good right there.
But that's it. That's all I got for Talladega. I'm playing DFS. I think you got me convinced. I might play a lineup over on FanDuel, just given all the value ads over there. And then I'll throw in some aggressive bets just to have some fun.
It's not every day you get to see Ty Gibbs be under 5K on FanDuel.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
Considering he's had top 20s on a number of these drafting tracks this year.
ownership is going to be huge, and we'll be on ownership. I know do you have cups for cheat sheet as well?
Yeah, I'm going to be
Okay.
handling Cup this week. So for
And then I
those
got
that are like,
Xfinity.
who do I tag this week? You can bother me on Sunday. You're welcome.
Yeah, hit up Sean for Cup because he'll probably be in on looking at those projections and the qualifiers and all that good stuff. I'm gonna take a shot at Xfinity here again as well. Xfinity, honestly, has been just as exciting, if not more exciting at times. So really enjoying those races, and then it's really nice to have a 3-race weekend with trucks kicking things off on Friday. So hell of a weekend here at Talladega. I'm sure they're already camping at this point.
My only thing about the truck races, why couldn't they have just decided to put it on a different time frame? Because
Yeah,
it's Friday while people are still at work. Come on, NASCAR.
maybe they're like, this is the bet. This is the easiest way to get people's attention is try to pull them from work versus watching something else. But I don't know if you saw that stat, but this is the first, or did you send that? This is the first weekend since 2000 or something like that, where all
Yeah,
3
July
races are on national
2000.
TV.
All 3 races are on national television this week.
It's pretty
Which,
cool.
yeah, not something you see really very often, too. But really cool to see. And you are right about the Xfinity races. Sometimes they have been better than the Cup races as it is. And you know what? The Xfinity car is kind of what the Cup car kind of used to be, Mark. So in a sense, you kind of get a little bit of that sense of how things were before the next gen car came around.
And maybe that increase in horsepower that they're looking at here for certain tracks might help a little bit.
That's the hope. That is the hope there, Mark.
That's all I got, though, man. It was good talking to you tonight, and I'm excited for this weekend. It should be a fun series of races. Blend that with a little bit of football action too, and really fun sports weekend in general.
Yeah, season's winding down, Mark. After Talladega, there's only 2 more weeks left in NASCAR racing. Then they're on a break till the next season. So it's really winding down here.
And we get to just iRace all off season, so we'll be out there in the cars by next spring.
Maybe we could just do a whole podcast just based on the whole console game at this point.
We'll do a Twitch stream.
Yeah, we could certainly figure that out. We should
Fantasy Guru
convince
Twitch.
let's convince the higher ups to see if they can make a Fantasy Guru Twitch account, and then we just host like a tournament or something there. That'd be fun.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, I'm for this idea too. Very for this idea. All right. Well, just to close out and put a bow on it, this has been the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. That has been Mark Hogan, the DFS Marlin. I have been Sean Engel, Shawnee247. It's great to hear from you all. Great to have you all listen and watch us talk NASCAR for a little over an hour and a half now. Been awesome. See you all next week. Good luck, and may the winners be yours in victory lane. Now let's go.